Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Mickey and Aurora are at my feet. Sorry about that. I'm going to plunge in with something that Eileen Calder has said. She's one of two or three people who've made similar comments. So I'm going to plunge in with hers, which is, I do not want to be rude or pass remarkable, but why are you still wearing the same headband and necklace as you did in hospital? I thought it strange enough then that someone could not have brought you several changes, but kept putting it to the back of my mind. I am now sure you are not being looked after properly. You need to employ a full-time nurse. Look after yourself. XX. If someone cannot take 5 minutes to pick you out a headband and necklace, then how can you trust them to care for your health? Eileen Calder, thank you very much for your concern. Thank you so much for your observations as well. I can assure you I am being very well taken care of. What you have not factored into the equation is how ill I really am. And also the tremendous obligations that I have in the ordinary course of my life, even when I am well and functioning at 100% optimal capacity. I still don't have the time to do everything that I should be doing. It's called too many responsibilities and too many obligations. And there are certain things I simply cannot hand on to others to do. There are also other things that I elect to not hand on to others to do. Now, I'm not going to go into the minutiae of the state of my situation at the moment, beyond saying that if you think this is a picnic, I would invite you to bring a blanket and join me on the grass, because I can tell you it's anything but a picnic. And one of the reasons why I have continued to do these broadcasts is that they give me a sense of normality, and they are a lifeline. You have no idea behind the scenes what goes on. You have no idea the physical effects of the injury upon me. You have no idea of the drugs involved to keep me even pseudo-functional. You have no idea of how many hours I have to sleep to get energy to do something for 10 or 20 minutes. I'm afraid I have made a few choices, and one of them is that while I am infirm, I am wearing what I was wearing the day that I had the injury. And I'll tell you why I'm wearing it. First of all, it's easy. Secondly, it's flattering. The colors are good because they make me look less washed out than I truly am. Normally, I'm pretty good at being able to wear practically any color. I doubt in this situation that would be the case. Also, the fact of the matter is, I do not have the time or the energy to be choosing for half an hour every day or 20 minutes what I should be wearing in terms of jewellery and headbands. I'm afraid the fashion parade has come to an end while I am infirm. There's also the fact that I don't have the physical ability to get to some of the jewellery. Now, am I going to have to explain further? I mean, it's nice that you have such concern for my welfare, and I appreciate it. But you are making a wealth of false assumptions, and I understand that they're coming from a nice place. But I can tell you in this instance, I am being extremely practical, and I hope it's not too much of a disappointment. If it is, what can I tell you? I'm still going to be doing it. I don't have the strength, I don't have the energy, and I'm not a goddess. So let's leave it at that. Okay? And believe me, I'm being very well taken care of. Michelle Vale says, so glad to see you at home and recovering so well. Your staunchness is an example to us all. Thank you. I have a question about King Charles. I believe that under the Statute of Westminster 1931, King Charles cannot simply, Mickey, stop it. Mickey, stop it. Mickey's doing something, and I can't have her rocking my boat. Sorry. I believe that under the Statute of Westminster 1931, King Charles simply cannot choose to abdicate, even though there is an apparent growing push from certain quarters for him to do so, considering his health and a few unsound decisions, defender of all faiths being one. Would you agree that a regency should be put in place, and that His Majesty should be allowed to retire with grace and dignity, and not to wobble along like the former US President? I'm aware that he has had to wait a long time to see his destiny fulfilled. However, if he's not up to the job, as has been opined, perhaps even a soft regency would be in order, especially in these troubled times now apparent in the UK. Best always, Michelle. Very interesting. You actually cover quite a lot of ground, and I'm going to address it by breaking it down. Well, the Statute of Westminster was in place when Edward VIII abdicated. That's the first thing. It would not be a preventative to an abdication if the king wished it. However, once a king of the United Kingdom is crowned, he has taken an oath to God to wear the crown till he is dead. Therefore, he's not supposed to abdicate. There is already a soft regency of sort in place. There's not going to be a harsher regency any more than there was when Queen Elizabeth II was entering the last decade of her reign. I actually think that the king is perfectly up to the job, I've got to tell you. I see him getting criticised for things he hasn't done and getting criticised for not doing things that he has done. He has always said he wanted to be defender of faith, of all faiths. He believes in God and he respects everybody else who believes in God. As for the title Defensor Fidei, it's a nonsense. First of all, it's not hereditary, but it's been inherited by every monarch since Henry VIII. It was particular to Henry VIII for the defence that he made of the papacy. he was made defender of the faith, defensor fidei, which actually, because in Latin there is no particular or general article, it's defender of faith. Defender of faith can mean of all faiths. I make that point for what it's worth. I understand people's concerns for sometimes a rather wide net that he casts religiously on the basis of if you believe in everything, you can't really believe in anything. But I think he is fulfilling his destiny, and I think he's up to the job, and I think he's doing it perfectly well. Sorry. I'm not one of those Charles Jeremiahs. And let's remember that in the last 2 decades of the Queen's reign, there was constant calling for her to abdicate as well. It's a media thing. They know, as well as I do, that the monarch is not allowed to abdicate. Hence why it's a perfectly safe subject to regurgitate. Let's put it like that. Millie Polyakov says, "Thank you for reminding people that Putin and Zelensky did indeed come to an agreement years ago, an agreement that was negated by Biden and the Western governments. The military-industrial complex is alive and well." I'm going to make another point. Eisenhower, in his original version of the speech, did not refer to the military-industrial complex. He referred to the military-industrial-congressional complex. Eisenhower saw that there was an unholy triumvirate determined to hang on to power and determined to create adventures which would allow them to hang on to power behind the scenes. So you would have an unelected administration as well as an elected administration. One of the things Eisenhower was warning against was the perversion of democracy in the United States. And for those of you who say the United States is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. A constitutional republic that is a democracy is a democracy. A constitutional republic that is a dictatorship is a dictatorship. It's a democracy. Okay? So when people jump on the high horse and say it's not a democracy, it's a democracy. A democracy means you are governed according to certain rules and regulations that are attendant upon all democracies, whether they are constitutional monarchies, whether they are constitutional republics, or whether they are pie in the sky. Okay? So let's cut to the chase where this one is concerned as well. Because I have to tell you, I'm getting really impatient with the fact that some people simply cannot absorb the fact that notwithstanding the fact that the United States of America is a constitutional republic, it is also a democracy. It's not a dictatorship. It's a democracy. And yes, Putin and Zelensky came to an agreement that would have brought the war to a halt years ago. It would have saved the lives of many Ukrainian and Russian young men and civilians. It would have preserved Ukraine's independence and sovereignty in a way that it is going to be less and less preservable the longer this goes on. If it suited Zelensky and Putin, why didn't it suit the Western powers, the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, to mention but four? Why did it not suit them? Answer that question, and you will see why what is happening is totally indefensible. And people who say, yes, Putin attacked, seem to forget that Kennedy was prepared to attack and would have attacked if Khrushchev hadn't climbed down. Virginia Mitchell says, Ukraine cannot continue to send young men to die in this pointless war. It allowed itself to be used by America so that a few people on both sides of the Atlantic could make a lot of money. It's shameful, and Ukraine and the EU need to bite the bullet and accept it was a failure and pay the price. No one else should die for this nasty situation. Virginia Mitchell, let's not park all the blame on the doorstep of the American administration. It's to blame for some, it's not to blame for all. The British are to blame, the French are to blame, the Germans are to blame. They're all living in fantasy land. They're all acting as if they are still great empires. And if they click their fingers, everybody's going to jump to their tune. And it's not happening. And it won't happen. They're not great empires anymore. Trump, I see, is being criticized for being, according to the Telegraph, an agent of Russia. Well, of course, it's all very good and well for the Telegraph and all of our newspapers to chat rubbish, because it's not our young men and women dying, it's theirs. But the fact of the matter is, any deal the Ukrainians are going to have to cut is never going to be a deal that doesn't involve giving up something. They are not the victors. They're never going to be the victors. When people get used to the fact that they cannot be the victors unless we have a third world war that is going to destroy the whole of humanity. Is that what people want? Because that's the consequence. Well, Donald Trump has been accused of being furious and having accused Ukraine of zero gratitude over his peace plan. May I make one or two points? Ukraine should be grateful. It also has no cause to be grateful. It should be grateful that somebody has the courage to say the exploitation should stop. You're going to have to give up more than you'd like. But if you don't do it now, you're going to have to give up a lot more down the line. In much the same way that the deal that's going to be cut now is not going to be anywhere near as favorable as the deal that would have been cut by Putin and Zelensky a few years ago. On some level, many of the Ukrainians know that they have been manoeuvred into a war so that other powers can get their hands on their wealth. Let's remember, Russia only wanted the guarantee that Ukraine would be neutral. The Western powers are the ones who ignored all their undertakings to Russia and to the Soviet Union and have wanted Ukraine to be a part of NATO, knowing that would be the ultimate provocation, that most likely would result in war at some point. The Ukrainians have been sorely used by us, the Western powers. Don't kid yourself. Don't think we have done it from the goodness of our heart. We've done it because we are governed by a bunch of ignorant, deluded, unhistorically sound, brain-dead idiots who are so in love with the sound of their own voice and their rhetoric that they actually believe their lies. When anybody with any discernment can know that what they're saying is rubbish. The Ukrainian people should be upset. They really should. So should the Russian people. This is not a war that either Ukraine or Russia entered into willingly. It's a war that has been forced upon them by the Western powers. And the Western powers have done it over a series of decades. Don't take my word for it. Listen to people who know more than I do. Professor Jonathan Haslam, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Professor Mearsheimer. They are the ones you should be listening to. They are the ones who know. Our politicians are a joke, a farce, and quite frankly, I would have no objection to some of them being put into the dock at The Hague for crimes against humanity. Of course, it won't happen because we are heading towards a negotiated peace, hopefully. And Ukraine will bawl and squawk. We in the West are going to bawl and squawk on their behalf without ever acknowledging the fact that we have blood on our hands, Ukrainian and Russian blood on our hands. The United States of America, it's going to get back its pound of flesh tenfold. When the Biden government was in power, there was already a move afoot through the BlackRock companies to seize as much of Ukraine's sovereign wealth as they could. Trump is simply doing a variation on the same theme, but he's doing it more conscionably. I mean, to the extent that this war needs to be brought to a quick halt. I commend him. And I don't care who doesn't like Donald Trump. There's an awful lot about Donald Trump that I don't like. But I would like even Lucifer if he was going to end up doing good in this instance. And let's not forget, the devil does sometimes do good. How else can he dupe you into thinking he is good? I make that point for what it's worth, as any theologian will be able to tell you. The precept is absolutely sound and solid. Ukraine will end up with a negotiated peace Everybody who ends up with a negotiated peace ends up having to pay the price. The other thing is total victory. It's not achievable. Listen to Merz and Macron and Starmer and David Lammy and how achievable it is. Well, if you want to give up your children's lives, go right ahead. I certainly don't want to give mine or anybody else's children's lives up. So, Mariella Pugliese says, thank you, Lady C, for speaking out the truth about Ukraine. Oh, sorry. By the way, I am here in Porto, Portugal, and was attending a gala dinner last night. On our table, we had a Ukrainian couple sitting next to a Russian couple and a few other nationalities, and all were getting along wonderfully. It was an evening full of magic and hospitality. Marielle Pugliese, thanks for sharing that. I've had many such evenings. I have friends who are Ukrainian, part Russian, part Ukrainian. Everybody that I am aware of gets along perfectly well socially. And I can tell you something, I have met very few rational Ukrainians who are not dead against what's going on at the moment. Don't think they're dumb. Don't think they can't see. Just because we in the West have been blinded by our propagandist rhetoric from the politicians and the mainstream media. And they absolute chat, total rubbish. Bitter Beauty says, are the Harkles aware that they're not welcome in top-tier political society or celebrity circles here in America? I ask because they hold themselves up as paragons of virtue and fonts of all knowledge. Love it, quite right too. They act like they're on the top of all the hills and have everyone's ear. Do you really believe that? Sorry, do they really believe that? Well, it's been my experience that every narcissistic, pathological liar I came across wanted you to believe that they believed their lies. But in my opinion, they have wanted us to believe that they believed their lies. And they have told themselves their lies so often that they would like to believe them themselves, but they don't. They usually still have just enough of a toehold in reality to know that their lies are lies. That's been my observation. I know many people think differently. I do not for a second believe that Meghan Markle actually, truly believes that she is a 6'10" supermodel with the body of Catherine, Princess of Wales. I think she'd like to have it. I think she tells herself that she has as good a body as, and that she is as wonderful as. And when the photographs come back, and you see this squat little thing with chicken foot, does she see it as well? I think to an extent she doesn't. But I suspect on some level she must see something of what's truly going on. I mean, look at those Harper's bizarre photographs. And that's Meghan thinking she's fabulous and looks wonderful. And there she is. And Charles Manson staring. And Charles Manson, better believe it. I think she tells herself that that's fabulous. And I think she looks at the photographs and thinks, they're fabulous, but I'd love to know what she thinks in 3 weeks or 6 months. When she doesn't look at her photographs, but she just sees a stray magazine floating around somewhere and realizes that the ugly butch woman with the nutty head and the cast eye and the Charles Manson look is her. And it's not a pretty sight. That's just my take on it. I could be wrong. I just know, going off other people I've known of the same ilk, when everybody else thought they believed their lies, I thought, no, they don't really. They want us to believe that they believe their lies. But they know, basically, that they're not quite what they want you to think they are. That's my take. Could be wrong. Sharon Mack says, as a businesswoman, surely Victoria Jackson would question as to why Meghan never gives anything in return, unless it's a useless pledge to give to Miss Jackson's charity. But a pledge isn't actually giving. I think, Sharon Mack, that you're making a wealth of assumptions here. I don't know Victoria Jackson. I've actually heard nice things about her, but I don't know her. And I don't really know anybody who knows her so well that I would be able to come to an informed opinion. But what I've heard is good. Nice people can be snobbish. Nice people who've come from nowhere can like the patina of royalty. That doesn't mean they're not nice. Just because they have mixed motives doesn't mean they're not kind and generous. She could also be rather more brutally self-aggrandizing. She could be shades of Meghan, in which case she would be frankly using them the way they are frankly using her. And it's a win-win for all of them. They get free flights. They get to use her apartment in New York. She gets to be able to be friends with them. She gets to be able to drop their name, which still has coinage in certain quarters. Ever diminishing circles, yes, but still those quarters do exist. Also, throughout history, certainly since the downfall of various monarchies, there have been many rich Americans who subsidized royalty and aristocracy. My ex-husband's grandfather, Henry Clues Jr., was one of them. He, for years, supported Daisy, Princess of Pless, who was a huge social figure in the Victorian and Edwardian age. And at the end of the First World War, her husband, the Prince of Pless, lost practically everything, and she ended up pretty much penniless. And Henry Clews Jr. used to subsidize her. Sir Chips Channon is another case in point. He used to help out Princess Catherine Yurievsky, who was one of the daughters of Tsar Alexander II. Her first husband was Serge Obolensky, Prince Serge Obolensky. And she ended up pretty much penniless on somewhere like the Isle of Sheppey. And Chips Channon, another rich American, used to subsidize her. He also used to help to subsidize Prince and Princess Paul of Yugoslavia after the war, when they were exiled. Now, they required less subsidy because Prince Paul of Yugoslavia's mother was from a very rich Russian family, and they owned a wonderful estate in Italy. If I remember correctly, it was in Tuscany. But Chips Channon helped to keep that ship afloat. Not everybody is so discerning that they will say, that's an aristocrat or that's a royal, I will subsidize, and that's one I won't. Some people have no discernment and they don't have the opportunity. They have to subsidize that which is available because they don't mix in sufficiently elevated circles to get to the truly prestigious people that you could help to subsidize. So I hope that answers that question. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. Please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be discussing. And I'm sorry if I got a little bit ratty over the constant failure for certain people to understand that America is both a constitutional republic and a democracy at the same time. It gets very frustrating when people keep on making the same observation, and sorry, I eat humble pie. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and hype? I remembered hype. Thank you very much. Godspeed and bye-bye.